Welcome everybody from around the world. Good afternoon, good evening, possibly good morning for those who are in the way future of where we're at, coming from Redmond. That's at least where I'm calling in from. We have a great hour of both sharing insights, talking about a special topic, and then engaging with you in any questions that you might have, whether it's on topic or off topic, but specific to things that we might be able to help with. My name is Mark Cashman. I'm on technically the SharePoint team, but I span across things like OneDrive, lists, a little bit in Copilot, and what we're doing in Microsoft Stream, but really anything foundational that SharePoint powers or is the storage mechanism for. And I'm here joined, and I'll want Emily and Gabe to introduce themselves quickly before we get into the first part of our agenda. Emily?
Perfect. Hey, everyone. I'm kind of on two devices right now, so I actually don't know if you can see my camera. Oh, okay, perfect. I'm in a hotel lobby at a Teams event. But yeah, so my name is Emily Swab. I am on the SMB marketing team, focus on the audience, building community with all of you. So I'm really excited to meet you all and be here today. So it's nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. Gabe, we got you on camera. Just a little bit about who you are and what you might be doing in behind the scenes during today's call.
Yes, and I am at the same team offsite event that Emily is, so pardon if there's any background noise, but my name is Gabe Ho. I am on the Copilot PMM team, product marketing team here at Microsoft. Almost explicitly focused on helping small and medium-sized businesses understand our product, learn what's the best way to deploy it to your organization so that you see value the quickest, and create as much opportunity for you, for SMBs to grow and scale with our fancy Copilot.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily and Gabe. And just so everybody knows, the chat is open. You can ask questions anytime. If you know who to ask, mention them. That's always easy to know during and then after the fact if we are doing a little catch up. But let's get into today's agenda, starting with just reassuring you, like every month, we really do focus on this being a great experience for everyone. The code of conduct that you should expect from us, we expect from you, is to be kind, to offer help where needed, and certainly just to be on your best behavior, both in chat, on video, on audio, if you're coming off of mute at some point. We do always encourage these community calls and anything that Microsoft is involved in to follow what we have as the code of conduct, of which you can always go and read more about what that is. And it's always that if you see something, say something, post something, let us know as direct as possible. We would appreciate that so that it's always a good experience during the call. And of course, we learn going forward. On today's agenda, you're going to hear a little bit from me, a little bit from Emily, and of course, in an engaged fashion within the chat from all three of us. We've got a few announcements to talk about what we're doing specifically for the SMB community. The special topic that I mentioned is to show you a little bit about Microsoft Lists and how to use it. I'll kind of show you a little bit of how I used it and what are some of the core features that I think you should try first if you've never tried it. And then we'll talk about upcoming events, one that's specifically important for tomorrow, and I'll probably let Gabe walk through that one because he's a part of it. And then, as always, open discussion, turn the chat the entire time, but towards the end, we've got some time carved out so that if you have a question, you want to come on camera off mute, you can. If you don't want to, we'll certainly read anything in the chat and try to cover as much as we can. So with that, I'll hand to Emily to talk a little bit about what is happening in the tech community of small business.
Perfect. Yeah. So thanks for having me. So like I said earlier, my name is Emily, and I'm thrilled to be here to talk about community. It's one of my core components of my role. And so I know that we are on the SMB community call right now, but I want to make sure you knew that we had like a dedicated space for community on the tech community. And so it's a place where you can continue to engage. So after this call ends, outside of our events, it's just a space for all of you to come kind of post comments about things where you can kind of interact with each other, interact with us. There's a whole Microsoft team of folks who are dedicated to customers like you. So this is where you can connect with us. So I encourage you to join it if you haven't already. So Emily Perina, she's the community manager, and she just posted in the chat for all of you the link of how to join this community space. And so What it is kind of three main components of how you can engage with us on this space. And the first of which is the blogs. This is where we're going to continue to post news and updates that are curated and relevant just for small businesses like you. And it's across all of our products. So it's a way for you to understand what's happening, what new features are coming out, what are some best practices, what are some events, things like that, to just help you, again, stay connected with us. So for example, we have a monthly blog series called Supercharge Your Business, that has like new products, but also tips of how to use these new features in your business. So stay tuned for that. And there's a lot of other content that's already out there and more to come. The next is we have a discussion space. Again, this is a place where you can kind of share what's top of mind for you. You can give us feedback. Maybe if there's just something that you found interesting, whether it's Microsoft or not Microsoft related, it is a discussion space per the name. And we want you to be able to use that to communicate with your peers and with us. And again, like I said, so we have folks from marketing, from engineering, who are kind of monitoring it. And so it's a way to kind of get our attention of what's top of mind, because we want to make sure as we're delivering content, it does relate to you. So it's kind of like a feedback mechanism for us. And then lastly, we have an events area. We're going to talk about it a few slides later. We have an event tomorrow, actually, but I just wanted to flag or give you a heads up that there's going to be more events to come. This is just the first of many, again, all geared towards customers, your size, your kind of what's top of mind for you. But please share with us as we, kind of put out different events, give us feedback. Are these covering the right topics? Do you want to see something else? If you have any thoughts, again, we're just trying to, serve all of you and then the things that you're looking for. So that's just a brief overview of what to come, join the community, and I look forward to seeing you and getting to know you in your comments.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Emily. Emily Squared, taking it down. If you haven't gone to that community, hit that link. You can always join the community and you'll get some notices and notifications based on your interest there. And it is a great place to ask questions, engage, and of course, consume the news. So we had a couple other calls that we wanted to call to your attention. One of them is a show, actually bi-weekly, and that is with my manager, Karawana Gatimu, and my peer, Heather Cook. They do a show that really focuses on recent product updates, what's going on within the community from an events perspective. A lot of times those are in-person event opportunities that are around the world. They have a focus on a lot of the different content that's coming across Microsoft 365, the Power Platform. Sometimes we get news from Azure and security. And we've just started to work with somebody from the security team who once or every other call will join in to give a specific 5 or 10 minutes updates on what's going on with Microsoft security. But it's a bi-weekly show. It's 30 minutes. It goes quick. It's got a lot of great information. They do a great job sharing what's topical and top of mind. And it's always available to join live, but is also made available on demand shortly after. So if you haven't seen an episode of Mondays at Microsoft, you can hit that link. It'll take you to rewatching a show, watching a show, or seeing what's upcoming. And again, we had one this week, and then our next one will be October 8th. And that date did change, so it's no longer the 7th. It's now the 8th. The second call that we wanted to call to your attention is the Microsoft Viva team is now doing a monthly call, similar to how this call is run monthly. And it's really to put out information about the Viva roadmap, talk about some recent features that have been rolled out and their availability. And then always they have a special topic, like we'll talk about lists today. They oftentimes talk about different of the Viva products or a different way of how to roll out and adopt Viva. I think their last call focused on the people sciences of using Viva Glint and Viva Engage to update how it is that you engage with employees at scale and also get the metrics back of how are we doing? What is the employee sentiment? So they always have great guests, a lot of great topics. And if you're into the Microsoft Viva or employee experience realm, definitely join their call. The next one is coming mid-October. And the ones that have already been in the past, you can always get those on demand. They will always be made available on demand very shortly after. I'll hand this over to Gabe. I think Gabe talking a little bit about the Copilot Success Kit for SMB.
Yes, thank you very much. So we have a new Copilot Success Kit specifically designed for small and medium-sized businesses to help you get orientated to what Copilot is, what are some of the best practices, and thinking about considerations when you're deciding to deploy Copilot. It also includes helpful tips and tricks and steps and checklists on what security, data privacy, and governance requirements you want to make sure you take care of or check as you're thinking about deploying Copilot to your users. The reality is Copilot is simple to deploy, but you want to make sure that your tenant is a healthy and well-managed tenant. And to confidently do that, we've created a few lists for you if you're a business basic, business standard, or business premium customer. We have dedicated resources all within the Success Kit that will help you navigate that. It also includes best practices and strategies on how to think about what exact business scenario or use case you want to tackle with Copilot and generative AI. Where are you in your business going to see the most value when you think about which employees stand to benefit the most from Copilot and generative AI? Those are questions that we try to help answer and help walk you through as you're going through the activities and things in the Success Kit. We also include resources for end user onboarding. So learning how to use Copilot, one, just as a general worker or something to augment your day-to-day life, that's a baseline skill and value that Copilot provides. But we want to go a step further and take a look at how Copilot can help you in your specific function or role, whether that's in marketing or in sales or in customer service. Copilot's able to do a lot of different things, and being able to think about how you want to target these things so that you can measure success and measure KPIs is equally as important to business owners and small and medium-sized businesses in particular. And so we've created this kit to be able to arm you with all the resources you will need to successfully deploy and drive adoption of Copilot within your organization. I'll drop the link in a second in the chat, but always happy to hear feedback. I know I'm posting actively in the tech community as well. And so as you're going through these, as you want to learn more about Copilot, if you do have questions, and even now during the session in the chat, feel free to drop them in.
Sounds good. Just wanted to let you know, Gabe, I put the link into the Success Kit and also for the programs that you're offering in terms of gathering and getting feedback, the Copilot feedback programs. This is the kind of 101 of what to expect of joining those different programs, the customer connection, the customer evidence, and a little bit about what you can expect from each. But the real value here today is if you join the programs, you can learn more and sign up today. That link is in the chat. It's also, I think, an active link on the screen because we're using PowerPoint Live. So feel free to click away that anything you see that's blue and underlined. Before I move into our topic du jour, Gabe, anything else to talk about feedback program or Copilot?
Real quickly as well, if I may, just in the tech community, we actually now run 2 additional blogs. I'll drop them in the links as well. We have a monthly blog that actually features customer case studies and customer success stories on how different small and medium-sized businesses are adopting Copilot. We'd love for you to take a look, and if you ever want to be featured, feel free to comment on any of them, and we'll make sure to get in touch with you. We also do a weekly blog that talks about how you can use Copilot at a very tactical level, just 1 or 2 things to start your week. So if you'd like to just drop into the tech community every Monday, we post there and just kind of get ideas and get inspired on how Copilot could help you in your day-to-day. That would be really fun, and would love to kind of chat with all of you through the community. But that's all.
That's great. I have to admit, I have a little connection to your monthly blog because my old manager, previous manager, Angela Byers, I think is your primary author. So I've seen a lot of what she's been putting out, and seen a lot of great stories across a lot of great customers. So definitely encourage it as a read, and encourage it as, if you have a story to tell, you have now people that can help you tell that story. So let's move into the topic du jour, which is Microsoft List. We're going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes just going through a little bit about what it is, how to use it, and hopefully you getting to know it. And if you have a thought or something that you've been using Microsoft Lists for, I'd love to see it in comments, just your use case or your scenario. Or, I was trying to do X or Y with lists the other day, and hopefully a pro, something you learned, or something maybe that you were missing, or was a piece of feedback. I'd love to be able to consume and read that all, hopefully during the call when we start chatting, or specifically after it, so I can take it back as learning from what it is that you're doing or trying to do with lists. But to be real clear, Microsoft Lists is a Microsoft 365 app. It's an app that's built on top of SharePoint from a where is it stored perspective. Getting all that out of the way, the real focus of lists is to give you a little bit more of a structured way to gather information, especially information that's tied to business process. So things might change, like status, ownership, the duration, or when things are due. And as you track that through completion, or you're just tracking things over time, think of lists as a great place to store that, especially when you've got a lot of different parts and pieces about individual, what I call list items, but you might think of as project notes or campaigns, or travel requests and whatnot. I'm going to show you a number of different scenarios, but just to clear the gate a little bit around how we frame what Microsoft Lists is. If you are in Microsoft 365, you'll see it in the app launcher. It's called Lists. It has the most beautiful icon in my perspective. It's very colorful. Click into that. If you don't see a lot going on, it just means you haven't used it yet. And as you start to use it, it becomes a central location for all of your lists that you could be tracking as you're doing lots of different things with events, campaigns, tracking physical devices as you check them in and out for different people. Maybe you have a fleet of trucks, or you have different ways that you want to follow up with different people, in terms of contact information. There's a lot of different use cases, and I'll highlight that when we get into that initial creating a list. But to break it down, the way that we build it is intended for it to be a much more easier experience than in the past. If you think about what was a list before, technically it was a SharePoint list with a lowercase l. Now it's Microsoft List with a capital L, but it's all the same component, same platform, same capabilities, if now a ton of new capabilities if you haven't looked at them in a couple of years. But we've really been focused on the simplicity of the user interface, adding intelligence, not only from a Copilot perspective, which we are working on, but what's in there today is around how you can set rules for notifications, how you can, based on status changes, change the visual look and feel of it, and have it be flexible so that it's customized to whatever it is that you're tracking. And it's not just what you're tracking, but how you're tracking it. So this is where hopefully my screen share will come through in just 2 seconds, but I'll pause here if you want to click on the resource that's on the slide right now. This is our primary Microsoft Lists Resource Center. It's actually now in the adoption.microsoft.com space. So think of this as the Microsoft Lists adoption page. But you can always get there with aka.ms/mslists. And maybe Emily, I can ask you to post that just as a link in the chat as well. If not, I can certainly do it a little bit later. But with that, let me share out my screen so that you can see a little bit of this in action. And I first have teed up on behalf of Emily Schwab. This is the small and medium business space. So beyond the slide that she was showing, here are the discussions, here are the blogs. And if you click into it, you'll see the blogs that then Gabe was talking about. Monthly, and the different individual blogs that are being posted, including they gave me a little carve out so that we could talk about this particular monthly call. So it's a great space. This is it in the tech community, and it's very easy to get to and very easy to get use out of it. But let us not delay looking at Microsoft Lists. What you're seeing here is me signed in to the Microsoft tenant, looking at Microsoft Lists. This is that beautiful icon that I mentioned, which is the Lists app. When you click it is essentially how you get to your lists of lists. And I'm now in a list that I've configured into what we call gallery view, so that you could see chapters of, if we were talking about lists for a full hour, these are the typical things that I would talk about. But also to show you the flexibility of the list is so that I can view it in this way. We'll talk about the new forms experience in just a second. But if I go up a level, this is now the lists home. And you can see these are my primary lists that I use. One that I use pretty much daily is the CNB schedule one. I'm going to talk about the Intrazone Tracker, which is a podcast that I manage, and how I use lists to help me manage the show. And then I want to talk about a little bit of a list that I have where the submission form for the list items is actually a Microsoft form that people can fill out anonymously. Just to walk you through a couple of use cases. But let me show you a couple lists so you can start to get an idea of what does a list look like and how can I work with a list. So this is our CMB schedule. This is a real list that my team and I use to produce new content throughout the year, webinars, podcasts, blogs. There's a lot of things that my team is in charge of. And so we're tracking across here, I think about 120 items, some that are in the future. And let me show you a couple of the different pivots, what we call views in this list. This is the same list. And as I go into one that I look at a lot is what do we have that's upcoming? So this filters everything that's in the past, shows me what's happening today, and then looks into the future. And some of the choices I made around the coloring is if something is today, make it blue. You can tell we had a busy day today across the team. Anything that's yellow is upcoming and planned for in the future. And then the various colors here, I can just choose those as I'm describing my content. What's the status? What type of content is it? Who are the people that I'm working with? Here's your friend Tiffany that I can see is the owner of the Champions call and of course of the SMB call that we're on right now, which is this item. So I thought it'd be fun meta point to show you the work item for this particular call. We know who is going to be the host. We can scroll down. You can see I can track who's the owner. Who are the speakers? No surprise by now. It's me, Gabe, and Emily, and then some folks that are supporting us, or at least our stakeholders, in us getting this, to a good state to go live, which you're currently in right now. Now, another pivot, just to show you, this is everything that's upcoming because I've programmed this specific view, is I also really am interested in what has been published. And to land here as published, it has to meet the criteria of being a date that's today or in the past. And it also has to be listed as currently published. And the reason you don't see that published column is because I've changed the different columns that I want to see. So this view shows me just what I need to see in something that's in a published state. So I'll give you one example. We've worked with the Sync Up team, which is one of our OneDrive podcasts. And the OneDrive podcast team submitted and produced a show that went live today. So it's published. The date is today. It went live at 4 a.m. this morning. And if you want to see who's the Sync Up team, this is a file, a picture that's stored in the list as a part of the list item. And there are Stephen and Arvin who did a great job in their latest episode. But we're tracking through completion, and I recently this morning marked it as published. So that's why it makes it to this Published tab. Only show me things that have been published. So that's one example of a list. If I go back up to my main list, I'm going to show you really briefly this other list for the Intrazone, where I track what is the episode number. That's an internal tracking number. What is the episode title? When is our targeted air date? And everything that's green has been published or is now in the past. So these are upcoming. And I do the same color code. If it's today, it would be blue. And then if it's in the past, it means it's done. Check green. And you can see who the different guests that we've had. And the one thing you can do with lists is you can always see the count. So we've done 204 episodes of the Interzone, and this is where I track everything from what are we working on, have we done it? And if I click into one, I'll show you one of the latest ones that I did is the August roadmap pit stop. The main thing that I use this for, besides tracking the information, is having this link in the blog, which I need to update for that one. And I know I did it for this one. So if I click this is just a live link. I can have it link out to whatever I want, and it happens to link out to this specific episode's blog, and then there's the episode itself. So for me, it's a way to keep track of all the episodes. The reason why I wanted to show you less of this one and more of it in context of where we actually work is I'm going to move into Microsoft Teams, and here's where Emily was letting me know computer is restarting. But let's move over to the Intrazone team, where I actually manage the tracker list. So this is in Microsoft Teams in a Teams team that I own called the Intrazone, and this is the general channel. And within the general channel, I can have a list. This is one that exists. So it's that same list. It's not a copy. It's not a duplicate. Same 204 episode count. And you can see, I can see all the details. What's nice is if you didn't know, a little tip, you can always expand the tab of a Teams tab. And especially for lists, sometimes it's nice to be able to see a little bit more left to right. And we now have this first column that stays fixed if I have a lot of columns that go out to the right. So that's pretty handy if you're on a small resolution screen. It's the same also in a mobile fashion. We have a Lists mobile app for Android and iOS. It sometimes is a wonderful / better experience if you're just looking to do something really quick. The mobile experience is really good. But this is where I go and I have the conversations around the list items. So the conversation is with the team. And if I collapse this, you'll see within our posts or discussions the different discussions that I've been having, sometimes with the list item itself, like this points to the list item, kind of a meta point because it just opens up that same tab to item number 76, which is a specific one we did around architecture. And you can see the different people I work with. The other thing I wanted to point out here with lists inside of Teams is I have about 10 people that I actively work with throughout each month, and 2 of them are external. And so Lisa, who is my producer, has access to this space, can work in my list and with me, collaborate with me on the list to refine items or to tell me when something is ready to be published if we've edited it. And it just becomes a working space for me to track the show with a little less heartache and headache over time because it's all right there. I can easily update it and point other people to it. The other thing I want to show you here, just so you get a sense of Microsoft Lists, is there is a Lists app inside of Teams, not just to view your lists, but to create them. So I'm going to go in and show you the create list experience. This experience is the same if I create a list in Teams, in the Lists app itself, and also if you're in the depths of SharePoint and have always been, you can always create a list still within SharePoint. So here I have the option to create a new list or add an existing list. Add an existing list is what it sounds like. There's a list that exists, and I just pull it in, so now it's a tab within my channel experience. But to walk through a little bit about the scenarios and to kind of answer some of those questions, what is lists really for? This is the create list experience, again, that you would see no matter where you create a list from. Even if you start from the Microsoft 365 app or the home page when you type in Microsoft365.com. But I can start a blank list, which is my favorite template. I can bring in a list, the smarts of another list, if I like the formatting choices, if I like the rules that I set up, if I created any flows from Power Automate, I can carry those forward by using the from existing list. The content is not what carries forward, but the capabilities and the look and feel. I can also bring in information in data tables from Excel, or if it's a CSV file, these are fairly similar. This one's just a little bit more robust. But to walk through what you're seeing here, these are all our out-of-box templates that effectively, as I click into a couple of them, let's say you want to create a list for various travel requests across all employees at your company. You can do that. This is a sample of what it would look like and the different columns that get created. And if I go in and use this template and call it Intrazone Travel, just for ease of sake here, and choose green as a color and maybe choose the clipboard because it'll be something like a clipboarded list. When I click create, it's going to create the list in the connected SharePoint site, but then give me the experience inside of Teams now as a new tab. And initially it's called whatever I called it, Travel Intrazone. But if I wanted to change that, it's a tab like any other, and maybe I just do travel and I use the emoji like this for the airplane liftoff. Click save, and now I've got a fresh new list that's trying to resolve here. And it's the least interesting part of the demo because there's no items to look at, but I'll just show you real quickly what it looks like. So these are all the things that were pre-populated for me from the template. So we'll just say going to Peru or mark to Peru. And you could set the destination. You could have these as allocated choices, or you can type it in hard-coded. I'll just fill in a couple things so you can see what is in the template. We're going to fly British Airways on this one. We're going to fly on the cheap, 200 bucks, and we'll just approve it from the get-go. But you could have a full review and approval process that sits behind it. we'll put in, let's see, the travel date just as I'm leaving on Friday. How about that? So I click save. Obviously, you can fill in a lot more details. And if I go left to right, you can see that I'm just starting to create a new list. One of which you'll see is that I'm in this immediate grid view. So I can make changes pretty quickly directly in the list. I don't have to open it up like you saw. And I can fill it out things like the date. I can pick and come back on October 2nd. I can exit grid view. I can create or view the other types of views that were created for me. And I can create new views. But that's the basics of getting started, what it looks like in Teams. I'm going to switch over, and the last thing I wanted to show you was the new Forms experience, and then we'll pause if there are any specific questions on lists and chat about it for a little bit, and then we'll kind of move through a couple more slides. So if I'm in a list, I'll go back to the one that I was using, and I'll show you the new Forms capability. So this is if I'm an owner or a member of the list. I can go right into it and do what I need to do, add new items, update things. But if I want, I can go in and also have a form. I've pre-created this form because I actually use this one internally. We call it production requests. Let us know what we can help you with. So you can customize a little bit more of what your end submitter is going to see. You can minimize what it is you're asking them to fill out, so it's not every single detail in the list because there's quite a few of them. But it's really what is the correct and specific information that you need. And you can go and add new columns. You can change the titles here. This one is kind of a live request form, so I'm just going to show you it in use. This is me getting the form configured. But as somebody who I might say, yeah, if you've got a request for my team to be able to help you with something, just fill out this form, and it can be a link in an email. It can be a link in a chat. I can actually embed this in a SharePoint page. There's lots that you can do with the form. But it's going to be a form that stays with the list, is for the list, and when I submit it, puts it into the list as a new item. So we're going to do, this is Friday. We're going to publish it by the 3rd. This is going to be, let's see, pre-populated, something for the sync up team, and the owner I'll make as myself. So I can do a GAL lookup, global address lookup, and we'll say the audience is external, and that's all I wanted from somebody to submit a production request. When I submit it in, just remember the submission process is then for me to get notified when that has been submitted. And if I go back to my list and I minimize this, I should be able to refresh, hit all items, and see that new submission come in, which doesn't yet have a title, so it might be a little hard to find. But anyway, that got submitted into the list, and now it's for me to then triage so that people can submit without full access to the list, but have a way to collect information for the ways that certainly forms are pretty well known for. Beyond that, a lot of what you can do around the different colors, if I go back to the view of what is upcoming, or in the view of all but not published, one thing that I'll highlight here is this red that you see as a coloration of the row. You can set your fields or your rows to be dynamically changed if they meet some certain criteria or are changed. So what you're seeing here is anything red is something that's in the past from a date perspective that hasn't yet been marked as published. And anything that then we triage each week, we can go in and say, did the date change for the champions call? No, that's happening today, so that one's probably fine. Is there something that we want to check in with Heather or Lori about the event recap from Commsverse? Let's open that and discover a little bit more. And just to give you an example, I can change this one because it's today, or actually we'll change the one that we're in now, right now, and do it real time. So if you'll notice, it's ready to publish, and the date is today. That's why it's red. But if you watch right here behind where it's checked, SMB Copilot, when I click this and make it published, we'll assume that we've reached the end intact. That coloration should change back on our list here, and that it didn't worries me, but let me give it a second here. Where'd it go? Am I telling the truth? Oh, now it's published, so it wouldn't show up here. All but published, but it should show up in our published content. There it is. Now listed as public and effectively is being removed from our triage view. So just a quick tour of how you can affect how things look visually, either date-driven, specific field choices, or the criteria that you set and have it meet. But let me pause there. I'm not going to stop sharing just yet, only because if there are questions of things that I can further demo or show you, I will do that. But I'll quickly check into the chat. It looks like there is a use case, 100 governance-related questions. I love the sound of governance questions and probably triaging to get the answers to those governance questions. So thank you, Dulcie. I'll read that in depth coming up. But does anybody have any questions? Come off of mute, come onto the camera. I'll stop sharing so it's not a mind blow to be able to see yourself recursively. But I'll pause there. Is there any hand raised or anything that anybody wants to share? Don't be shy. This is the time to ask any questions. If there's something else that I can show you, I have about another 2 minutes before we need to move on. I see Dulcie, go for it.
Yeah, I was actually just going to jump in and just, talking about that governance list.
Yeah.
It actually, the integration then with Power Automate and approvals just takes it to that next level. So we have, it is our living document that we deploy for all of our clients now when we start talking about M365. And we've just added, actually it's over 200 questions now because we just added, I think it was 32 Copilot related ones.
Right.
So that we can, again, ask them those questions. And even if they don't decide to act on that particular item, we've still asked them and they understand that that is a decision point that they still need to look at maybe down the road, or some other things, like just simple things like who can create teams? Is it going to be IT, or is it going to be to a specific AD group, or is it everybody?
Yeah, self-service, let everybody do it.
Yeah, and then I run the OCM team also. So once they make those decisions, we have technical tasks that would be implemented that have to be approved and then implemented. But also, I need to know as a lead trainer, do I train how to create a team, or do I train how to request a team? Those kind of things. So
I love it.
It turns into an application once you start putting those flows on top of the list. It's a whole application environment then, because it's so powerful.
Yeah, and to be honest, you're using some language that's not outdated, because I don't mean that, but we used to position lists almost entirely around being able to create solutions.
Yeah.
And back in the day, it was a SharePoint workflow. Now it's a Power Automate workflow. That's what you just mentioned that I was just showing in the user interface.
Yeah.
Being able to create that's existing off of an existing flow. Actually, some of our templates come with flows built in, primarily around review and approval. But I like that you have both where you store and manage the list, especially as things change, and that for those things that you can automate and make more programmatic for your own sanity, I think sounds like a great use case.
Thank you.
Yeah, the very light form, I'll just show it because we do have that moment, is if you go in and all you're looking to do is to have some reminder or notification set. Here's the setting a reminder, but I want to show you the rules of where I can go and create a rule that then does send somebody a notification based on something that's happened, and it'll make sense when you see. But if you go into the create a rule experience, click into the one of the templates that looks familiar or looks like it's going to meet your criteria. So imagine this list is the production list. If the status of an item becomes something specific or changes in general, let's say to a specific value, and we'll say that it's been assigned. So imagine we have a list item somebody put in there or requested our assistance, and during triage we actually said, yep, it's assigned to, and then you can say to who? To the owner, to the person who created it, or you can have it send it to you as a notification. But I think the real value of rules is to be able to use the list to make the rule work even more for you. So in this case, the status, if it were to change to assigned, would go to the person that we've listed as the assigned owner. So that rule would send a notification, and I'll just create it so you can see that it's live and active. And then that would be a rule that would then, anytime somebody goes in, just to give you an example, on anything that's not published, and let's say it's been one of our newer things that's been intake. Let's see, we've got an owner yet? Yeah, so we already have an owner, but let's say the value here, I won't change it technically, but if the value here went from that to assigned, it would trigger that rule and send a notification to the owner The owner in this case happens to be my manager, Caruana, because she's listed here, but it's whomever was listed as the owner would get that notification. So you can always have that be a little bit more of a dynamic rule versus send to this specific person all the time. It'll use the list to gather the information of who to send it to and then send the rule. So that's a lighter weight flow, not the same exact what Dulcie was saying by any stretch, because that's real business process, and you can build in lots of if-then type statements into a Power Automate flow. But they're all native here in terms of our integration with Power Automate. It is there by default. If I uncheck this, it'll come back. You can see Power Apps to create dynamic forms, Power Automate to build out real custom flows, or to visualize things in Power BI, which is a really nice feature. If not tried this one, if you haven't tried this one, it does a lot of the work for you to be able to then visualize your list of data, especially if it's a really large list. But definitely give lists a try. There's a lot that you can do on day one to create a list, to put a list in Teams, to create a list, and then use the comments feature so that you can talk with people about different things. You mention them, and it's all a part of the list conversation. Or if you're in Teams, of course, leverage the posting capabilities within Teams native. But it's just another very useful application within Microsoft 365 to be able to track and manage your information at scale or just across a ton of different use cases. Again, if I go back up here, these are my 5 main lists that I use to track versus minus this one, which is really just my cheat of having my agenda in a list. But so that we don't run out of time and certainly don't lose the value of having a conversation about lists or more, let me sneak back in and restart our PowerPoint Live. And just to check in with Emily or Gabe if there was anything specific in the chat that I might have missed. And if not, we can continue through the last couple of slides here just to give you a little bit more information around what's happening tomorrow. So Gabe, I'll throw it to you unless there was any immediate questions we can start with. And I see Gabe. Gabe, you're on mute. Are you able to share here? I can cover some of what it is that you and the team are doing tomorrow. All right, well, just for the sake of time, tomorrow is a pretty broad Ask Microsoft Anything. And some of the folks that you can see pictured here are Emily and Gabe. They're going to be on to tackle a ton of questions about a really broad spectrum of different tools within Microsoft 365. And by nature of, I know Melissa, she represents the SharePoint team. She owns the Pages experience. So Pages, web parts, news, what we're doing with Viva Amplify. And of course, with Gabe, the focus around Copilot and specific to SMB use and tools that I might not be familiar with. There's a full broad AMA tomorrow morning. I bet Emily Perina is helping manage that one. Emily, give a shout out if you are, and I'll give you a pre-kudos for supporting that one tomorrow. But this is partly what Emily was talking about. This is an event that you can expect and you should join tomorrow, but also indicative of the types of events that the SMB team runs, AMAs, webinars like this, and the broader notion of outreach and discussions when you have questions. So tune in tomorrow. The link is there. It's a big, broad one that'll take you into the tech community. The one thing that I've just been getting is a little bit of feedback for anything in the tech community. It's free and it's available to join, not a problem. It's anonymous as far as just sitting back and watching, but because this one is a text-based AMA, if you want to ask a question or if you want to provide feedback or respond to something, you have to be signed in to the tech community. That might go without saying with this crew that meets monthly, but if you have a tech community profile, you'll be able to sign in and engage. So it's a great opportunity tomorrow. Don't miss it. Some other upcoming events that wanted to call to your attention if you're scattered across the world. There are a number of different events that are in person. Some are free, some are paid. And we just put a quick list here together. There's a resource on this page that I'll call your attention to if you want to click on it. It'll take you into this resource, communitydays.org. And it has 2 elements, of which I was just going to give the quick 101 demo on it so that you can see it in action. This is communitydays.org. And the real value here is you can see all the upcoming events. I'm just going to scroll through chronologically, a way that you can discover where the event is, what time the event is. If you're looking for work travel type training and this meets the criteria, choose a destination. There's lots going on. These are all third-party events. This is not where we promote, ignite, or build, or inspire. These are driven by the community, for the community. Some are very hyper-local. Some are destination style events, some of which I had in the list on the slide, but there's of course a lot more. The other thing on this site is if you go to it, communitydays.org, is click on calls, and you'll see on a monthly basis, or you can click in and see it at a month view, a week view, you can see what are the different calls that are happening this week, like this one, but also covering different areas. Here's our call. This morning we had the Microsoft 365 Champions call. If you're a developer or specifically interested in the Power Platform, there's a number of different calls. You click into one and you get the details of who's the owner, how do I join, can I register, add it to my calendar, all of those things. So communitydays.org, great resource. Certainly highly recommend checking that out. But from this point on until people disappear and it becomes me and only me, would love to hear from you about what you saw today, or if there was something you didn't see today and you come with a question that we can help answer. And now is the time. And if you just have an anecdote, all right, Cameron, go for it.
Yeah, I was just wondering for the forms part of lists, if
Mhm.
I know for lists you can add attachments as a field option. Do you know when we can expect that to be able to be used in a form?
Yeah, so that item just landed on the public roadmap as far as a next feature that's coming, what we think of as wave 2 for the new forms experience. There are 4 items that got published, and I was just looking to share with you sort of the initial blog where we announced the forms capabilities. It shouldn't take me too long to find it, but I'll just tell you, if you go into the public roadmap, which I can put a link in the show notes, you'll see that new item that's listed for being able to put attachments in a lists form is coming soon. And I was hoping to get there before your question so that I could share that link directly to that blog, which here it is. And then I'll also share a link that'll take you to the new roadmap item. So this is the blog if you want to learn more about the new forms experience. It's got a nice video, some help information of how to do it. And unless somebody can beat me, let me get the link to the Microsoft 365 roadmap. And I will pre-filter it on lists for you and shoot that into the chat. And then after posting this, I'll actually look for the item that you were asking about because I should now be able to see it. Let's see it. Add attachments to forms. Let me share this out. And we'll make this a dynamic answer. How about that? All right, so we're on the public roadmap, what we call the Microsoft 365 public roadmap. We list everything under SharePoint just because that's the product nature of things. But Microsoft lists add attachments to forms, and it looks like the rollout date is November 2024. That's when it'll start rollout. So I'd say coming soon, but in your mind, hopefully that's close to coming soon. And the good thing about this team is they ship to everybody. So the intention is for this to be a worldwide rollout that starts in November. Oftentimes, if you're a GCC customer, it'll be a little bit later, but our intent is to provide the forms experience and form updates to everybody. And thank you for the question. And I think once it's available, I will be using it too, because I often need to go back to somebody that submitted a request and ask them for a nice graphic that can accompany the work that we're doing sometimes when we get to the point of amplification and posting and tweeting. So it's nice if they can do that from the get-go. Just add the high-res hero graphic or something like that and have that be a part of the form. I would like that too. Just as an FYI on timing, I do not have a limit of time, but that doesn't mean that we have to keep you over. But if there is anybody else that has a question, a comment, or just an anecdote of what it is that you're doing with Microsoft 365 that other people can learn from, it's always nice to hear from other folks than Microsoft. And certainly if you have a question or a piece of feedback, other people might as well. So it's always nice to hear from others. So I'll give another chance if there's another raised hand or anybody interested in asking a question or sharing a scenario. If not, we'll move to wrap it up. I want to make sure as we do that, if there's any last thoughts from Emily or Gabe, they might be in a location where they can no longer talk, which is okay. But Gabe, Emily, if you can hear me, if there's any last thoughts to the community before we round out the call, and anybody from on the call who is still here, if you have any questions or comments, I will pause and make sure we get to that. All right, I will take silence as we all have lives. Let's get back to them. Thank you to everybody who joined in. And if you're watching this on demand, thanks for joining us. Let us know what your thoughts and feelings are, how you like today's show, and certainly anything that we can produce in the future to tackle those questions and show you products and get you information that you want and need. Other than that, I'll end the recording and say, have a wonderful rest of your day. If you're already on to tomorrow, have a really wonderful future.